Welcome. These will be my thoughts on Wonder Man Season 1, Episode 4, Doorman. The episode is rated TV-14, so this video there will be spoilers for these 4 episodes, and potentially we'll see everything MCU leading up to them as well. And yeah, another episode that I loved. So technically this episode did air before Black History Month, but it does work well for it. I didn't even plan for, but basically, this like rise and fall of, a black actor here happens to have superpowers, but it is a overall straightforward story of, and I appreciate that technically there are superpowers involved and there's a tragedy, but it is a fact that people of color, minorities in general, tend to be, punished significantly more harshly than members of the majority when something goes wrong. Yeah, I think, let's go. Right, so yeah, we are halfway through the season. Usually they wait a little longer to do the flashback episode, but I guess maybe later in the season we are getting one that's specific to Simon for these MCU Disney Plus shows, I mean. Yeah, let's start with right, I appreciated the concept. It works well that, it was just mentioned and Simon didn't want to explain it to Trevor. And then we get an episode that actually shows it to the audience, and then ends with Simon, walking away from, walking off set because he, is concerned this could happen to him. And that is I've heard from a number of black leftists, when something happens to one black person, many other black people will immediately think, that could be me, that could be my family, Yeah, so at the start, he genuinely is just a doorman. And, I'm not saying there's something wrong with that, but I don't know. Somehow I wasn't quite expecting it to literally be a doorman. And later it is, like a call sign or, not secret, but identity, alter ego. And let's see, I think I really like the decision to do this black and white, even though it's not actually set that far back. Like, yeah, at first I was thinking, oh, so this is like, yeah, at the very start of the episode we see, okay, it's black and white. So, yeah, thinking, oh, this is like decades ago, and apparently, let's see, I have to admit, I know Radioactive, but I did not realize that saying that it's the most important song in the last 3 years would place it in 2015, and someone on IMDb Trivia, says, at least. I know, you can't always trust IMDb Trivia. I can't say for sure if that one is one of the ones you can trust or not. But let's see. Yeah, and they do a really great job. Like, immediately we care about Davis because he is very charismatic, The the 2 girls from Texas, and he's, talking about the, like stereotypical Southern dancing. And let's see. I found it really charming that, so first Davis calls Josh Gad Mr. Gad, and then he says, please call me Josh or J-Gad, been trying to make that a thing, and later he calls him Mr. J-Gad. So he can't quite, completely abandon calling him Mr. and then his last name. A lot of powerful people want that from someone who does not have as high a status as them. And let's see, what was the other thing? I guess it's around that part where he gets his powers, and that was also, I love how this show visualizes superpowers. It's so much more interesting looking than a lot of the MCU. And again, it might be like primarily a budget thing, but yeah, he touches the rocks on chemical waste, which that is a way to the some kind of science thing related to a large corporation. There's a number of characters who got their superpowers like that, and then he ends up in you know I know I'm not the only person who thought, oh, he's gonna have to get out of the sunken place. But yeah, and a bunch of doorways opening, and he teleports home and then ports his dog. And yeah, I honestly thought that the thing about how he goes into the other apartment to get his dog would like come back to haunt him or something. And I think that does bring us to, so yeah, at work he's told, hey, you can't let anybody else in, we're pushing it on the fire code. And Josh Gad, it is genuinely funny, him performing In Summer. I have not watched Frozen yet, but I will get to it. And I know that song because cultural osmosis, but that's, yeah. And read the thing about, when Olaf started crowd surfing, it went, yeah, that was popular. And yeah, a fire starts, and he ports through the door that is being blocked from the inside by all the others. And one can understand, but it is one of those things. In the event of a fire, the first thing you're gonna want to do is form an orderly line, but you need to fight that instinct. You're welcome. Go watch it. It's a really fun bit. Anyway, the there's probably people who don't even remember it. Now I feel old. Yeah. So let's see. You have the thing about the what's the other? Yeah, and he gets them to port through, and Josh Gad trusts him enough, and then later Josh Gad disappears into, I don't know. I have to wonder if later in the season they will find a way to bring Josh back. Like if the although they did say, I mean, it's not like this was like a day ago. I don't know. It just, the fact that we don't like see him definitively die, but then Davis does vomit. I guess it's not impossible that that's his powers malfunctioning and killing whoever's inside portaling. Now yeah, and it was great. He trusts him so much because they have this personal relationship. So he ports through, and then he sticks his head out and says, "Come on, it's fine, it works." And then it's this classic Hollywood thing of he becomes an overnight sensation, but it's essentially a gimmick, and it does start to wear on him, He's being made fun of to his face on a show. He's doing the joke himself. People are saying, his 15 minutes should be up on the internet. You know, yeah, it's it's happened a number of times without the superpowers, that is, in real life. And yeah, like, I could never be in show business. I gotta say, it's such a brutal world. But yeah, appreciate. It's always dicey when you know showbiz criticizes showbiz, but it felt real. And yeah, I think that brings us to the right. And I like the thing about, so he gets, you know yeah, he does a movie with Josh Gad. I am not sufficiently familiar with Josh Gad to say if it is accurate or a, one of those winky, nudgy jokes when he says that he can't act and it hasn't stopped him from being an actor. And I think that does. So yeah, a good montage of him, in different situations. I like that he's paying it forward. Josh Gad said, if things quiet down, maybe come in and have a drink with us. And then he says it to the new doorman, and I think let's see. Yeah, I thought it also really worked the thing about, early in the episode, he's talking to his boss, and there's that thing about, are you happy? Is this what you want? Because a lot of people just use the doorman job as a stepping stone to something bigger, and he does end up getting something, more like, he becomes famous, but is he happy? And yeah, it is. That's again a major thing. If you are in showbiz, you have to every so often slow down and think, is this what I want? And I think that might bring us to what's the next thing? Yeah, you have that mention of, oh, there's like a huge ad campaign, and then it turns out to be for like this, like, I think they're called laxatives or something in English. Yeah, yeah, that's not exactly what he wanted people to think of him in connection to. And then he's told, oh yeah, by the way, the, you know, someone else is going to get that job, and we can't sue for breach of contract because they have so much money. Again, major problem in showbiz. I mean, capitalism in general. The ones with power abuse those without. And I think I don't know that I have a super relevant video to recommend. Little Shop of Ali recently did a video talking about the Vampire Diaries. Representation matters except for when it doesn't. That was really, really good. And also about, you know, yeah, black people in media. And I think that does. Yeah, the part where, yeah, so the IRS are brought up, and yeah, the thing about, well, struggling to pay bills, and the agent is like, well, you're not supposed to count on the next paycheck until it's in your hand. You never said that. Well, I'm saying it now, because he knew. And that's, again, major problem in showbiz. Agents and such will tell you whatever they, you know, figure will be most likely to get you signed, and then only afterwards point out, oh, hey, by the way, you should probably be careful about this, because like if he had said that up front, maybe Davis would have been like, I don't know, maybe I'll go for something more stable then. And the I like the line, disappointing cookie is worse than no cookie. And when someone says snickerdoodles, I always think of hoodwinked. I should watch that again. Must have been like 5 times by now, and I'm still just, yeah. I know not everybody loves that movie like I do. I think, does that bring us to the... Right, and so yeah, he does, add for, what's it called, potato bag or something, and then turns out a bunch of people, you know, were burned by the steam. And it's one of those things of like, well, yeah, it seems really likely to happen with a product like that. They probably should have been more careful making it. To be clear, I'm not blaming the consumers here. And yeah, the fact that, that's like that negatively affects him when he's essentially just like taking the jobs he can get, and suddenly he's being blamed for something, he didn't develop the product. And I think that does bring us, but yeah, so he makes that video apologizing and saying, he's gonna, pull back for a little while, and then, of course, when Josh Gad calls, he says yes, even though he feels like he should be, yeah. And it's a short scene, but yeah, it accomplishes that there is this, yeah, he just feels, he doesn't want to say no. They're friends, but he does want to pull back. He feels like that's what should happen, and he's telling people that. That was another thing. I thought maybe the episode would feature, that the company would be mad at him over siding with the ones suing. And yeah, the bit where he's on the TV show. So I already mentioned the IRS thing, but you also have the thing about, I've been taking acting lessons, and then, he does the gimmick of pulling out something, and he does the one of the Hamlet soliloquies and ends it with ding dong. It's just, yeah. And yeah, there are people in showbiz who were frustrated, even upset by someone making fun of them like that. And yeah, I think that might cover the yeah, I think that brings us to, and I also like that it's called Cash Grab, but because, like, yeah, there are a bunch of movies in Hollywood that are cash grabs. So yeah, continue to appreciate the commentary on Hollywood. In a uh, red carpet, I guess, interview, one of the people working on it called the show a love letter to Hollywood. And it is, I agree that, it's just also willing to acknowledge, some of the criticisms. And again, this feels very much like, this was made by people of color, because this is, you know, I appreciate that not only people of color experience this kind of thing, but again, the way that it hits so hard, yeah. And this thing of like making a universal rule, like, because the thing is, you could genuinely just have said, hey, if we're going to hire someone, with superpowers from now on, we need to be sure that they're capable of controlling it, because it's one of those things of like, well, yes, the superpowers are one aspect of it, but it's really the fact that, it was Hollywood chewing him up and spitting him out. That was the problem. The superpowers were just how that manifested. Like, there have been real life scenarios where, obviously it wasn't superpowers because those aren't a thing in real life. But yeah, someone like trashed a hotel room, maybe physically assaulted someone, do you see, like, would you like a comprehensive list of cishet white men who, because of how fame treated them, ended up becoming physically violent with, perhaps personal property, which obviously doesn't matter as much as sometimes fellow human beings, do you see a law saying, oh, if we hire a cishet white man for showbiz, we should, the what was it they said, the insurance is astronomical, no, he's being scapegoated, basically. The there are people in Hollywood who killed someone, and yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is getting too dark, but yeah, I'll leave it at, some of there are people who have massive careers in Hollywood who have done horrible things, and I think, okay, at this point I feel I should definitely recommend. I forget if they did more than one, but there's at least one video by Somewhere News on cancel culture and how it does not really affect the most powerful. They are uncancelable. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, and let's see. I think it was maybe the co-star is, asking Davis, "Are you sure you're okay?" And he insists, he's okay because there's, you know, a lot of pressure to not be a problem, be in any way difficult. And this is, of course, especially the case for members of minority communities. And yeah, I thought they did a good job on, like, we can tell something bad is about to happen, and you can see, like, his, that's also an interesting way to do it. Like, it almost sounds like his stomach is struggling, and it is, the stomach is where stuff is thrown, pulled out of, jumped into, stuff, such and such. And I think that might bring us to, I forget, but I think the person with the, who appears on show, what are they, I think the subtitles identify him as Mario Lopez. I think that is an actual, I really don't follow that kind of crap, but no offense, Mario, but I'm really not a fan of, like, that kind of gossip, the kind where you're, you know, yeah, like, I believe I am fond of the kind of gossip where you're trying to help the person, but this kind of thing of just like, oh, look at what that person's doing, isn't that, so, like, you're not trying to help anyone. It's just, yeah, I think we need to get better here in the West. I can't speak for the rest of the world, but here in the West, we have to get better at controlling our, like, I get, we all have some morbid curiosity, but, yeah, I think that does, yeah, and it's made clear, the DODC got involved at this stage, and since then have been, you know, yeah, the it's maybe not the entire thing, but every so often they'll look for an actor who has superpowers, and yeah, I think that might cover the right, appreciate how comic booky it is to have, his again, it feels weird to call alter ego because it's not a secret. Well, I guess an alter ego isn't necessarily secret, but yeah, his alter ego, has the same name as his former job because it's related to his superpower. That is very, yeah, a lot of mnemonic devices in comics since there's so many characters and superpowers and such. So yeah, Doorman, he used to be a doorman. His superpower is teleportation. He's called Doorman. That's very and the what's it called? It's alliteration. Demar, Doorman, Davis, like Peter Parker and Clark Kent, etc. Okay, technically one of those is a C, the other one's a K, but yeah, same sound they make. Yeah, they're at the end where the thing about bad news. No, it's good, and yeah, like it's even more risky now for Simon to be and yeah, I mean that is the thing. Like if this was set in yeah, so it's set in 2015 or so, and so he that's they said in the episode before this one, it's been about a decade since he started. So I guess it was very early in his career, and yeah, the he's still trying to get work, but he is scared of people realizing that he has superpowers, and yeah, there's a intense level of discrimination against people who are members of minority communities within, I mean, again, capitalism, white supremacist, you know, patriarchy under all, you know, yeah, but showbiz is one of the places. I suppose showbiz is one of the places where it's especially visible because we can all see, hey, this person deserves, they worked hard to get where they are. They deserve more respect. I mean, you can look at something like the Star Wars sequel trilogy and look how completely underserved John Boyega was when he yeah, worked so hard to be there, and then they give him nothing to work with. It's just Disney woke washing, which I appreciate this show is technically another case of. Yeah, I think that might cover the entire episode. Yeah, I really appreciate, they're continuing this not massive stake kind of thing. This might be the one that has the biggest stakes so far, and it's, one person who might not even, Josh Gad might not even be dead within the MCU. He might just be stuck in there, and maybe if, Davis, because they specify he's not dead. Davis is not dead. He's under surveillance, which it's like, that's not necessarily gonna help matters though. That might make him even not even necessarily purposefully, but just psychologically he might really you know yeah, when someone is in need, it is very important to help them and be careful in how you do that. And he's just being punished for something that he didn't even know that was going to happen. Like, best I can tell, he essentially thought, I don't know, worst case scenario, he'll collapse on set or something. And that's also kind of what I thought might happen. I thought the reason for the doorman clause would be that they were, I figured that it was, scapegoating once I realized, oh, it's a black man who is almost unique, spectacular in a way. Yeah, there's probably some kind of, he was punished excessively for something. Yeah. But the let's see. Yeah, I thought that it would be, oh, he's difficult to work with. He, can't. He doesn't show up on time, and he forgets his lines, something like that. But yeah, I think that covers the entire episode. Abolish ICE, strange rights for human rights, free Palestine.